You have ADHD, right? Yes. That's so cool. Okay, why? Because you have this superpower. I saw a video about it. You can focus on stuff for hours. It's called super focus. You mean hyperfocus? Yeah, it sounds so awesome. You can even read a book in just 2 hours. Well, it's a bit more complicated. It's funny because I always thought people with ADHD had trouble focusing on stuff. But super focus sounds like you can focus on anything you want. Hyperfocus. It's called hyperfocus. You see, brains with ADHD have less access to dopamine, a chemical you get when you do something exciting, rewarding, or interesting. Yes, I've heard about this dopamine thing. Well, sometimes when something seems super interesting, rewarding, or exciting to our brain, it locks on this task and ready to grab all the dopamine it can. That's what we call hyperfocus. But wait, isn't ADHD supposed to mean attention deficit something? Yeah, it stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. But if you can hyperfocus on something, how is that a deficit of focus? Sounds confusing. Yeah, a lot of people think ADHD isn't the right name for it. I think it should be called something like Attention Regulation Disorder. We don't really have a deficit of attention per se, but we do struggle to regulate it. You mean you can't control what you focus on? Exactly. I can have a list of things I should do today, organized by priority, and my brain will totally disagree about what's a priority. For example, the other day, I finally decided to pay a late bill online. I did everything right until I had to confirm the payment with my banking app on my phone. So I unlocked my phone to open the app, but before I could even do that, I saw an Instagram DM notification. And my easily distracted brain decided that checking this DM was more important than confirming the payment. So naturally, I ended up watching short videos after short videos. And hours later, right as I was ready to fall asleep, I realized I'd completely forgotten to confirm the payment, so I had to repeat the whole process the next day. Oh, that sounds so annoying. It really is. I'd already done 90% of the task, but my brain shifted focus without me realizing it. Okay, I understand your brain gets distracted easily, but can't you just use this hyper-focus thing to crush important tasks? Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. It's not a switch you can press. I don't decide when I will hyper-focus on something. Sometimes I want to hyperfocus, like when I'm writing a script for a new YouTube video, but I just can't. And I need to make huge efforts to tackle the task completion. It's exhausting because even the things I love can feel like a mountain I have to climb. And sometimes I hyperfocus on things I don't want to focus on, like spending hours perfecting a complex animation when I know I need to finish the rest of this video. But you can hyperfocus on anything? I think so, if my brain sees it as interesting, rewarding, or exciting. But a lot of people with ADHD also have anxiety. So for many of us, hyperfocus can happen on anxiety-driven thoughts. But why would your brain think that's fun or rewarding? Because when you're anxious, worrying feels like you are problem solving to your brain. And that's rewarding, even if the worry isn't about a real threat. Whoa, that doesn't sound fun at all. And even when I'm focusing on something I enjoy, it still has its drawbacks. Hyperfocus can feel great, but it also means everything else gets ignored. Even basic needs like drinking water, eating, or going to the bathroom. Going to the bathroom? Yes, I can tell you how many times I've ignored my need to pee when I'm in a hyper-focused state. I guess the feeling of urgency keeps me locked into the focus because my brain enjoys that under-pressure state. But it can cause problems eventually. Yeah, I imagine. And if we are not careful, we can exit hyper-focused state, completely exhausted, dehydrated, starving, irritable, and with a huge headache. After all that dopamine, you can also get a dopamine crash. A dopamine crash? Yeah, it's when your energy levels completely drop. I can feel empty and exhausted for hours or even days afterwards. Doesn't sound great. It's not. That's why people with ADHD have to learn how to manage hyperfocus, pace ourselves, take breaks, and stay aware of our needs. But it's not easy to do. So every single person with ADHD experiences hyperfocus? No, not at all. Hyperfocus isn't even an official medical term. It's just something the ADHD community uses to describe this state. Everyone with ADHD experiences focus challenges differently, but sometimes I feel like that too. Does that mean I have ADHD? Not necessarily. People without ADHD can also experience deep focus or dopamine high. It's actually another reason why it can be difficult to identify undiagnosed ADHD in adults. That's why I created my ADHD Prediagnosis Workbook. It walks you through 25 official and unofficial symptoms of ADHD with real-life examples of how they might show up. It also helps you recognize masking and compensating behaviors, things we often do without even realizing, just to fit in. That sounds really helpful. Where can people find it? There's a link in the description below. If you ever wondered, could I have ADHD? This workbook could be a great first step. So, hyperfocus isn't really a superpower? Well, some people with ADHD do feel like it is. But for most of us, it's more complicated. ADHD makes regulating things harder. Our attention, emotions, even our impulses. It's still a very misunderstood disorder, even for those of us who have it. Thank you for explaining hyperfocus to me. It's much clearer now. See you soon to talk more about ADHD and how it shapes our everyday lives.